Hello and welcome to the Life in General podcast. My name's Nick.
I'm sorry to hear that. Is there anything I can do about that?
What the fuck?
Sorry.
So we go through one episode where you're like normal at the beginning, and now I don't know what the fuck's going on again.
Just being cheeky. Sorry.
Cheeky?
Yeah, why not?
Cheeky. Anyway, any questions or comments, you can email us at contact@lifeingeneralpodcast.com. Ian, what's our Twitter handle? You said you'd remember it.
I never swore. I never
Yes,
promised
you
that.
did. You were like, I told you what it was, and you were like, oh, and then you like said it a different way, and you're like, and I was like, well, that's not what it is, and you're like, well, that's how I will remember it.
Isn't it like at Life in General Pod?
Huh?
Guess I don't know.
At LIG Pod.
Yeah, that was right.
Because you're like Lig Pod. I remember that now.
Lig Pod, and I will now. I don't remember that.
No.
Lig Pod, I would have remembered Lig Pod. You're looking in the distance, and it's freaking me out.
Yeah, because
it's behind me.
There's a window over there, and I could swear I just saw something in the window.
Oh. I'll tell you.
Right,
I'm going home, so if there's a killer out there, it's going to get you.
My gun's upstairs, so.
Yeah. We're trapped down here, too. It's something.
Well, I mean, we can go out that window, but.
Yeah, what if that's coming through that window?
Yeah, there's nowhere over here. I mean, I've got some rather large knives on the other side of my bar there.
Yeah. But what if it's like an unstoppable killer, like a Jason Voorhees or something?
All right. Well, anyway, we're on Podbean and iTunes, and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes.
6 star.
Check us out on Spotify and on YouTube also.
Indeed.
Thanks. Good night.
That's about all Nick can tolerate me. He's done. He's over.
So there's been like a recurring theme over the course of the past, I don't know, probably the last year of us talking about music.
I wouldn't really call it recurring. It's just it's intentionally recurring. So is it really recurring? It's just recurring is the impression that it's like randomly recurring, but we've made a conscious decision to do music episodes as a regular
So
thing.
because we've talked about music so much, I've decided to talk about it even more.
We're always going to talk about it.
So we're going to talk about the music of Pink Floyd, because that's a band that I really thoroughly enjoy. But I need to say something up front, that for a long time, I would call myself a casual Pink Floyd fan. I mean, I liked a couple of songs off of Dark Side of the Moon. I liked a couple of songs off of The Wall. And that was kind of the extent of my Pink Floyd listening.
Right.
And that's changed dramatically the past couple of years. And I think I've said this on the show before, that I think it was just as I've gotten older and gone back and listened to some of this music, I understand it. I understand what they were trying to, because when I was 17, 18, 19 years old, it was just music to me. I didn't understand what they were trying to create with their music. I just heard a 23-minute song that had lyrics for 45 seconds of it. And that, I mean, and I'm talking about Echoes. Echoes has more lyrics than that, but it's
right.
just it was just, I didn't understand it.
Because I listen to a lot of songs that are 20 plus minutes long too, but a lot more lyrics than that.
Yes, they've got some longer
a lot
songs.
more like music jumping too. It's not
change of pitch and things like that. And they've got songs that are longer like that. They don't have a whole lot of lyrics to it. And now as I'm older, I have a better appreciation for what they were doing, I guess.
Okay.
All right, thanks, guys.
I can't add anything to that. That's your opinion. The only thing I can add to that is my opinion, and I would still consider myself that casual listener.
Yeah.
I've listened to more than just Dark Side of the Wall, but
They've got an interesting past, though. And I guess that's
They do,
that's the other thing. When I was younger, I mean, I knew who Syd Barrett was, and I was like, oh, he was this crazy guy that did too much acid and fried
crazy
and fried his brain. And
well, it's not the truth.
That's not even close to being the truth. And I've watched a couple of documentaries recently, and when I say recently, within the last couple of months, 2 months, and I think they all kind of overplay
Sid's contribution.
No, I wouldn't say no, because he had a huge contribution to the band the first
2 years, 3 years of the band.
Well, from 62 when the band was formed until 68.
But as far as like their output goes, it was really just a couple
an
years.
Album.
Yeah,
it was an album. But I think they really overplay the drug use, and obviously there was a lot of drug use in Sid's life, but there's a lot of other like big issues. So I kind of go back to
he was schizophrenic, if I'm not mistaken. So
he was never diagnosed anything, but I'll kind of go back. So the band was formed sometime in '62. Roger Waters, Nick Mason, Rick Wright, they all kind of get together and they formed a band. The band was named T-Set. I don't know why. It's a very British, name for the early 60s.
If memory serves, because I watched a documentary on them, and they didn't live the lifestyle so much when they were trying to do the band, but didn't they all come from kind of upper middle class British families?
Yes. Yeah. Well, they were definitely middle class, but it was once Syd Barrett kind of came in to the band in like I think it was like mid to late '62. The band kind of took a different tone musically, and it was definitely they did a lot more. Syd Barrett was heavily influenced by the Beach Boys and that California rock sound. Even though it didn't really come through on their music, that's kind of where he came from. And it was before a concert one time, they found out that there was another band by the name T-Set. So that's where...
Two bands actually chose that as their name.
Yes.
That's odd.
So Sid comes across the names of two relatively unknown blues musicians by the name of Pink Anderson and Floyd Council. Mm-hmm. And the names just kind of stuck with him, and that's where the Pink Floyd sound came from. Ultimately, they dropped the and sound and just became Pink Floyd. But they actually, you can even see there's a lot of concert posters from the mid 60s where there were the Pink Floyd sound.
Yeah.
And but they were all kind of went to school together. It was an architecture school that they all kind of went to. And but here you have this group of young students, because they're all really young at this time when they put the band together, and whose love of music and playing guitar and kind of just jamming together. It was really an interesting period in time. It was there was really a lot of transition going on in the music scene.
Yeah.
Through the use of psychedelics and things like that, and they really kind of created this alternative style that wasn't really being played at that time.
One could argue that they're only psychedelic to a degree. I mean, even their earlier stuff, there's a blend there.
No, but even like before they recorded Piper at the Gates of Dawn, there was the band started out they were doing blues covers and more traditional rock songs, and they were doing like psychedelic covers of them. So, and that was before they even started writing their own music. So they basically like a cover band when they started out,
right?
Just kind of with their own sound, and like when the band started, when they recorded Piper at the Gates of Dawn, when they recorded Saucer Full of Secrets, it really happened to coincide with the birth of and the explosion of FM radio. Because prior to the late 60s, AM radio, you had like a 3 or 4 minute top track. That was it. If you went over 4 minutes, they weren't playing your song. And whereas this new FM radio,
because it was more underground. FM was
there was no time restraints. There was a couple of major FM radio stations in New York. They would play the entire side of an album,
right? Mm-hmm.
And just play the whole thing out. And without those musical boundaries, I think it really helped play into the style that Pink Floyd would become.
Right.
With more progressive, more elaborate.
But
songs.
to be fair, they struggled to get any kind of real recognition, according to the documentary I watched, up until the mid '70s.
Yeah. It wasn't until like
they were kind of an underground band.
65, 66, yeah. But they were still, there was a psychedelic scene in the 65, 66, like I said, and it was, I'm trying to remember the name of the one documentary that I watched. They kept calling it the UFO Club. It's not the UFO Club. It's the UFO Club, is what it is.
Yeah.
And so as soon as they started saying that, I'm like, do you even know what the fuck are you talking about? But anyway,
I've noticed that with a lot of like I call them the secondhand rock documentaries.
Yeah.
Where they'll do like an hour on a band that's been around for 50 fucking years.
Yeah.
And they don't cover anything, and then half their information
anything
is
of substance.
Anything of substance, and half their information is, it's not entirely accurate.
So it was. So I don't remember the name of the guy that put this club together, but it was I don't even remember what exactly the building was. I don't remember if it was like some kind of religious building or just like a town hall that he rented the space out on like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they called it the UFO Club. And it was Pink Floyd that kind of headlined this club, all weekend. And it was there where they started using, psychedelic colors, and they were kind of the first band to really popularize things like lasers and props during the
light
show.
shows.
Light shows.
Yeah.
And
they didn't really have lasers back then. But
no, you're right. Lasers didn't come in until early 70s.
Right.
But Sid would, put different colors on dials and play them over the lighting and kind of have this trippy psychedelic kind of mood going on, right. and that's
stuff that would really, really stand out for someone who's tripping on LSD or whatever.
As I will admit, as someone who has dabbled in psychedelics in their life, I completely understand that.
Right. And as someone who doesn't, that might explain why I have a hard time sometimes really getting into that kind of music.
Yeah.
Because I don't. I have never dabbled. I never will. I have no interest in dabbling.
I'm a very big Pink Floyd fan. I've got 20. I counted yesterday, the day before. I've got 29 of their albums.
Right. Well, a lot of them are just duplicates. You get like, I want the original pressing. I want the remastered. I've got this on CD.
I've got 4 copies of The Wall, but we'll get to that.
Right.
But I have a hard time with some of their earlier music because I'm not necessarily a fan. They're like Piper at the Gates of Dawn is a very, very late 60s album.
And I like that album a lot, personally.
I have a problem. There's a couple of good songs on it. I mean, but some of it, I mean, it's like it's out there.
Yeah,
definitely.
it is out there.
But even before I get into the albums, I'll kind of blow through some of the albums, but it's just a band, and I think we've even said this recently when we talked about our rock show, a band like this couldn't exist today. No record company is going to give a band 4 or 5 albums to grow and develop. When you figure their first top 50 album in the U.S. was Obscured by Clouds, which was their 7th album.
Right.
Now, granted, Dark Side of the Moon came next, but it was really at this time that they're kind of putting everything together. That's a long period because that's 71.
Yeah.
When Obscured by Clouds came out, I think.
You know better than I do. I've got their catalog right here.
I'm sorry, you were getting ready to say something though before I rudely interrupted you.
Obscured by Clouds was 72.
Okay, 72. So it was a year before.
Well, I was just going to say, you point out that they couldn't exist today, but I think they would exist in a different realm. They would be more of an EDM kind of thing.
But I don't
today. They wouldn't be doing what they were doing. I
don't think
that sound wouldn't exist today.
No, I'm not even talking about the sound. I just don't think a band is going to have that opportunity. No record label is going to sit and wait for you for 7 albums to put something together.
Oh, as far as that's very true. Very true. But I think we even pointed this out in the last music show, Rush had the same problem.
Yeah.
If 2112 was their last album. They were contractually obligated to make that album, but they hadn't sold anything. Their albums were not selling. That was after that album was done, they were all planning on getting real jobs.
Yeah.
And that one blew up. So,
but the funny thing, like going back to,
and that wouldn't happen today. It's bad. Where I was going with that too.
Going back to Syd Barrett and the whole mental issue, it was funny. Like I don't even remember when it was, but Sid's behavior grew more and more erratic.
Yes.
To the point where he would play. They came to a tour. They did their first tour in the United States after Piper was released, and there was a show where, over the course of the show, Syd Barrett would slowly detune his guitar. Now, granted, the people in the crowd
probably aren't going to pay any attention, or
they thought it was part of the act, but the band grew just more and more aggravated with, him just not showing up, or him doing an interview and just staring blank into the face of the person on TV and never answering anything, which he did on several occasions. And, and it was just, finally the band kind of had enough of it. And I think the last straw was when they were in the process of rehearsing for Saucer Full of Secrets, which was their second album. Sid had written a song that the band was practicing and trying to work out. And every time the band would kind of figure it out, Sid would change the song, like every time, and they were just kind of going over and over. Sid thought it was a game, but it was just frustrating to the rest of the band, because he's just, at this point, he's just wasting their time. Right. So it was.
Now, at this point, they'd already brought in David Gilmour as a backup guitarist, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So it was during that period that they were on their way to a show, and one band member said to somebody else, "Hey, should we even bother to pick up Sid?" And then the rest of the band was like, "Nah, fuck it. Let's just go. We'll just go do the show." Right. And Syd Barrett's mental state at this time it was probably hardest on Rick Wright, because he was living with Sid at the time. And I heard one story where they said Richard Wright said that he'd just come up with some story. Hey, I'm going out for a little while, and he'd leave, go do a show, and he'd come back that night, and Sid would be sitting in the exact same spot on the couch and not even know that Rick was gone. Yeah. So it was like there was obviously huge mental issues going on that no one was even willing to pay attention to. The entire band stuck their head in the sand. So did the record company. Everyone that was in line that could have helped him kind of gave up on
they
him.
really weren't diagnosing that kind of stuff back then anyway. And even if they had, back then, he would have just ended up in some really shitty asylum.
Oh, probably. Yeah, well,
because they were still around back then.
Yeah, 68.
They would have just put him in a crappy hospital, drugged him up, and locked him in a room, and he would have, really wouldn't have had a life.
The band members, at least for the first couple of years after he left, they at least maintained a good relationship with him. Right. David Gilmour and Roger Waters actually performed and produced Sid's first solo album. Mm-hmm. And I think Gilmour and Wright produced Sid's second solo album. So there was still some kind of relationship. The one documentary I watched, I think you watched too, completely, they made it sound like once he was out of the band, they dropped off the face of the earth until he showed up at the recording studio.
Not the one I watched. They mentioned, they brought up in detail about his solo albums.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I knew that. But other than that, they did kind of... No, I want to say they actually probably spent more time on the band's regrets about not intervening more on his behalf back then.
Okay, well, maybe we watch a different one.
I think we might have watched a different one, but they did go into detail about the solo albums. And
okay.
And like I said, a lot of... Especially Roger Waters, because I think they were friends the longest, right?
Actually, Sid and David Gilmour grew up together.
Okay.
They were all friends for a very long time.
Right. Because they in the interviews, I mean, obviously David Gilmour there's a lot of remorse, but they really kind of focused on Roger Waters, because Roger Waters really called himself and everyone else out for not really doing more to help him, including Sid's family.
Yeah.
So.
But it seems that David Gilmour was kind of the driving force in whenever they did a live album, which was, they did the second side of Imagawa was a live album. They did Pulse. They did what was the other one they did? They did another one in the early '80s. Not a collection of dance songs. I remember the other Delicate Sound of Thunder. That's what I was trying to think of. The Delicate Sound of Thunder. Whenever they released anything live, David Gilmour always made sure there was at least one Syd Barrett song
so
on
he
there.
Could get some royalties.
So he would, the band made it, especially David Gilmour, it seems like, made a really concerted effort to make sure there was continuing royalties going to Sid, just to make sure he was taken care of.
Right.
And when he died, I want to say he left, $1 million or $2 million to his sister. So he was obviously taken care of.
Right.
And I don't think
you wouldn't know it by looking at him. No, I mean, as far as from stories I've heard about his appearance and especially in the late '80s, early '90s, he looked rough.
Oh, he looked rough. He looked rough in '75 when they were recording "Wish You Were Here."
Yeah.
He showed up. He famously showed up at the recording studio, and no one even recognized him.
Right.
And it only been 2 years. I think it was 2 years since his second solo album came out.
Right. Yeah, 70. I don't know.
So it was like 72, 73, something like that when his second album came out.
Uh-huh.
So it only been a short period of time, but in a 2-year time span, he changed considerably.
Yeah.
When he showed up in the recording studio, his head was shaved, even his eyebrows were shaved off. He had gained a lot of weight. Just a very different look from what Syd Barrett looked like.
Right. Yeah. I wonder if that had any. Well, probably not, because we'll get to it, but influence on the character of Pink in the movie The Wall.
Well, we'll get to that, but the Wall was based more off of Roger Waters' life than anything else.
Yeah, but I think the mental breakdown of the character was Sid.
Somewhat. And it was also somewhat, I'd say it was 50% Sid and 50% Roger.
Did Roger Waters really break down that much at any point in his life?
No, but
because the character in that movie,
the whole concept,
crazy.
Concept of The Wall was born out of an incident that happened on the very last tour after Animals was released in '77. The concert was in Montreal. It was a big show. There was a guy in the very front row that kept lighting off fireworks. It really irritated Roger Waters. Roger Waters gets in a confrontation with the guy. They yell back and forth, and Roger Waters ends up spitting in the guy's face. And it was after that show he leaves with Bob Ezrin, and because him and Bob are really good friends,
right.
And that's where Roger Waters concocts the entire idea of the wall, and walling off him and the fans and everything else, and the whole kind of thing came together.
Right.
Especially coming from.
I was referring more to the movie because I know there's a disconnect between what the concept of the film is and the concept of the album is.
Yes,
I was referring more to the concept of the film, not so much the album.
But even like all the things that happens to Pink in his early years in that
happened
movie,
to Roger Waters.
That's all Roger.
His father died
in World War II and everything else, and
kind of a domineering mother,
and the school issues and all that stuff.
Fair enough. But I think the break, though, I always perceive that to be Sid-esque,
yeah.
But
I think that's kind of where Roger's frame of mind was after Montreal in '77.
Yeah.
Where he's like, you know what? I can't do it. I can't deal with this. I can't deal with society. I just want to wall it off. And it's just, we'll get to all that because there was a whole concert issue and David Gilmour basically quitting and going and watching the rest of a concert in the sound booth, all sorts of crazy
stuff.
Wow.
Just back to Sid real quick. I heard there were some shows where he would buy a ticket and just show up to shows. As a casual,
I'm not.
I heard
sure
stories about that.
I don't know if any of it's actually really.
It's hard. I mean, you can't. Yeah, I mean, you really couldn't prove it, but fans saying that they saw Syd Barrett just sitting in the audience watching the shows and things like that.
But the funny thing is, you say that, but God, could anyone even tell you what Syd Barrett looked like?
I can tell you what he looked like as a young man. I couldn't tell you what he looked like as an older man. No.
Well, I mean, there's pictures online.
Post 75. No, I couldn't identify him.
No,
but
that's why I'm saying. How did fans identify him?
Yeah, it depends.
That's
I mean, there's some diehard fans who know the things about the band that you don't know, and I mean the same thing with me and Tull. There's things I'm going to see that no one else in the audience will see.
Yeah, But anyway, so their first album, The Piper of the Gates of Dawn, was released in August of '67, and in the summer of '67, there wasn't really there wasn't the sound that Piper was. It was, like I said earlier, it's a very psychedelic kind of album.
Yes, it is.
And it was really kind of groundbreaking at that time. I don't remember how it charted. It charted fairly well. I want to, in UK, obviously not so much in the States. Are you looking it up?
I am, because I've got the album right here.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm just scrolling down. Charts and certifications. 6 in the UK and 131 in the US, which makes sense because, I mean, the UK charts are very different because it's a smaller demographic.
Yeah. So, and obviously that kind of music had more of a following.
Right.
Oops. I'm like pulling my cord here. Yeah, definitely had more of a following in the UK than it did
But
in
ultimately,
the US.
any record label, no matter what label it was, you'd want better numbers in the US.
Yeah. And like I said, I think one of the things that kind of hurt their US numbers was the fact that they abruptly ended their US tour after a couple of shows.
Uh-huh. And back then, that was the only way you could really, because there was no internet. You had trade magazines and your shows. That was it. That was how you got your name out there.
Yeah. And if you've got the songs weren't like super long.
But they really weren't. They're not radio. I wouldn't say radio friendly because they're radio friendly, but they're not. They don't translate well, and that's kind of Pink Floyd in general that I've noticed. I mean, later years they got better, but
Piper is a different album.
It is a very different
because
album.
they actually released a couple of different singles off of Piper.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I shouldn't say off of Piper because there was 2 singles. See Emily Play was one. I don't remember the name of the other one that were released on the U.S. edition.
I know which one.
That weren't released on the U.K. version, and those two singles did pretty well.
Well, they also released "Flaming" and "The Gnome." It says here, singles from them. There was probably a 7-inch.
Those are rather strange songs, especially the Gnome.
But it was probably 7-inch. It was an A-side and a B-side, and it was released November 2nd.
But it's got
U.S. only.
It's got a couple of really good songs on it. Astronomy Domain is a great song.
That's the one I like a lot.
It's a song that they played pretty regularly throughout their career. Interstellar Overdrive is another really good song.
That's another good one I like.
Lucifer Sam is a good song.
I've always liked Piper as a rule. To be honest with you, I don't remember Flaming, but I can understand why they picked it though. The Gnome isn't on there. I don't know. I don't see it on the track listing, but there it is. Anyway, but Flaming and the Gnome are probably the short songs.
Yeah, they're short.
2 minutes, just over 2 minutes long each.
Well, for the most part, the songs aren't that long. Obviously, Interstellar Overdrive is a long song.
Yeah. 9 minutes. Or almost 10.
But anyway, Bike is another good song. I like the song. It's a little weird. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a strange song. There's something catchy to it that I like. But outside of those 4 songs, the rest album, I can kind of go without. Just saying. Well,
and I would point out that not only is Interstellar Overdrive a longer song, it's an instrumental. It's a almost 10 minute long instrumental. Mm-hmm. Even a lot of your progressive rock bands, which I know Pink Floyd's always kind of been lumped in with progressive rock. I don't see them as a progressive rock band.
I see them as the first progressive rock band.
And I've seen them. It's arguable. Like I said, they're on all the progressive rock lists, and people do see them. I see them more as like a psychedelic rock or art rock.
Psychedelic rock, their first album, but outside of that, not so much.
Yeah. See, I don't get the same progressive vibes from their later albums that
they were definitely doing.
I see an art.
They were definitely doing
rock.
Things that other bands weren't doing at the time.
And if you go by that standard,
that's progressive.
Yeah, that's progressive. It is, I guess, but most even pointing out, you wouldn't get a 9-minute instrumental or 10-minute instrumental from the vast majority of your primary progressive rock bands.
Even in '67, no one was doing that.
Oh yeah, in '67 definitely.
That's what I'm talking
But I
about.
mean, progressive rock technically doesn't even exist until '71, maybe '70.
A lot of people would say that Piper was the first progressive rock
There
album.
was a documentary that MTV did. It was called Rock Legends, and I think it's Rock Legends. Yeah, and they did an episode strictly on in 1984. They did a episode strictly on progressive rock bands of the '70s, '60s, and '70s. And yes, Piper was one they brought up as a progressive rock album. The funny thing is Ian Anderson was the primary interviewer. That's how I've seen it. But that was actually the only time the first time I'd ever even heard of Piper. And that's why I listened to it, was because it was considered. I still, to this day, I don't see Pink Floyd as a progressive rock band in the traditional sense. I guess you can look at Piper as a progressive rock album.
I see it more of a psychedelic album, but
yeah. Well, I mean, once you start blending genres anyway, it gets different.
Because that's the thing when you take a band like Pink Floyd, you almost have to look at it like multiple different bands,
right?
Because you've got
I think that's true of a lot of those older bands, though.
But you got the Syd Barrett era, which was Piper at the Gates of Dawn and one song off of Saucerful of Secrets.
Right.
And then you have this kind of transition period from Saucer through Imagawa, where they were kind of trying to figure out what they wanted to do. They did a soundtrack. They did,
Is that more?
More, yeah. But they did bits and pieces of other soundtracks, and just like I said, trying to figure out. So that's a whole different section, and then you've got that from Adam Hart Mother, which was kind of the end of their really experimental period, through. I'd say, I guess you can go all the way through the final cut.
Which is '83, which is the last of the original lineup.
and that's kind of where Roger Waters really took over the band.
Right.
That's a whole nother period because it's a completely different band, basically.
Fair enough. Yeah.
It's got the same people, but it's a very different style.
Like I said,
the music came from a different area, and then from Momentary Lapse of Reason through the end of the band.
I almost see those as David Gilmour albums, to be honest with you.
Almost, yes.
Because they are very, very David Gilmour. And to be fair, I relate better to those albums than I do a lot of the earlier Pink Floyd stuff. And up until this past week and a half, I've never even listened to a Roger Waters solo song.
Yeah.
Which I just did. I listened to his last album.
Deja Vu is a really good song.
Yeah, that's the one that stood out. It was a good song. But I've always related more to the Momentary Lapse of Reason, Division Bell era, even though it's just two albums of a very extensive career.
Those two albums are vastly different because Momentary Lapse of Reason should have been a David Gilmour album
it very much is. I think Division Bell even is to a degree.
Rick Wright and Nick Mason had very little to do with the creation of Momentary Lapse of Reason.
Right.
It was David Gilmour, his girlfriend at the time, and then a lot of studio musicians or people brought in to be studio musicians.
Right.
And it wasn't really until Division Bell where Nick Mason and Rick Wright really came back into the fold creatively.
Right.
And
that's why you can still hear that and there's that David Gilmour influence though. That's primary. That's primary on Momentary Lapse of Reason.
Absolutely, but it's overall package wise, Division Bell is a far superior album than Momentary.
I could argue that, but I would probably agree with you overall. Yeah, it's a much more cohesive album for sure.
But anyway, going back to Piper because I was trying to start at the beginning. The title actually came from chapter 7 actually of Kenneth Graham's The Wind in the Willows, which I never knew that growing up, but I always thought that was kind of right because I've always loved the name, the Piper of the Gates of Dawn.
I know, me too.
It's a great name.
It is
for an album.
It is absolutely.
So second album came out was A Saucer Full of Secrets. It was released June of '68, and it was basically the end. This is where the songwriting of Syd Barrett ended. Obviously, he still had a huge influence over the album, and it's also the album that has the only song that all 5 members played on, which is Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, which I know the
version I heard of it was just the documentary I watched played that. I'm assuming it was a live version of the song because it was video footage of them doing it.
I think they really tried to play it up the psychedelic. But go ahead and finish.
Well, that was the first time I'd ever heard that song, and it was in that documentary.
And I think the part it's Roger Waters just repeating "Heart of the Sun"
over and over again. Yes, yeah.
That's like a 30-second clip in that song.
Okay, and they just played that over and over again in that documentary.
Yes, because that's not. It's a really good song. It really is.
I probably have to listen to the song itself. Just real quick, Saucer Full of Secrets charted worse than Piper.
Of course it did. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. 9 in the UK opposed to 6 and 158 opposed to 131.
Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun is the best song off the album.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if I'd say that. It's either that or Let There Be More Light, which is a fantastic song. I think it's the first song off the album. Those 2 songs and Remember a Day are really the only redeeming songs on that album.
Okay.
The title track, I've said since the first time I heard it that it would be a great song to play in a haunted house because there's long stretches. How long is the song?
Let's find out.
18 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that.
Let's find out. Oops, that's not the one I wanted.
Track list.
It is 11 minutes and 57 seconds.
Oh, so it's not as long as I thought it was.
It just seems longer.
But there's long stretches of the song where it's just like weird noises and like.
It's listed as an instrumental with wordless vocals by Wright and Gilmour.
Yes.
Wordless vocals.
Yes.
Yeah. So humming and just
take that for what it is.
Exactly.
But those 3 songs, Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, Let There Be More Light, Remember a Day. If you listen to those 3 songs, it's a quality album for those. But it is the interesting thing, that album was the first album to use hypnosis for the album cover. That's the art group that did the album cover for Saucer. And Saucer actually has, I think we've talked about it before, it has who's the Marvel character on the front of it? It's
Doctor Strange.
Yeah, it's got Doctor Strange on the cover of it, which you can't really see.
You have to look.
You have to really
Careful.
look. He's on the right side, and it's got, I don't know who the other one is, Doctor Doom or whoever it is on the.
I think it's Doctor Doom. Yeah.
On the left side. But you really kind of have to look at it. But yeah, Hypnosis was, I think it was just 2 guys. I don't remember their names. Strom something. Thorgerson.
Strom Thorgerson.
Yes, Thorgerson. I was close. And I'm not looking at
it.
It's
Storm. It's listed as Storm, but I think it's Strom. It's a Swedish or
yeah.
But
they did a lot of their album covers through. I think the last one they did in the Roger Waters era was "Wish You Were Here."
Mm-hmm. Strom Thorgerson is credited. He's a graphic designer. Has done albums for, covers
a lot of people.
Sabbath, Peter Gabriel, Yes, Muse, Ween, Zeppelin, Fish.
Their whole
Parsons.
Everything started with Saucer Full of Secrets.
Yeah, okay.
Because
he died in 2013.
It was with that album cover that sparked his whole career.
Uh-huh.
And really, prior to that album, very few album covers used any kind of abstract artwork. And album covers typically had a picture of the band on it.
Right.
Which
typically
Piper was the only one that had the band members on the cover of the album. Everything else was some kind of abstract kind of artwork.
Right.
And it was kind of, like I said, it was something that just wasn't done until that period or before that period. But it was during the recording of Saucer, like I said earlier, that Sid really had that mental break that and it got to the point where he was even violent with girlfriends. There was a lot of other things, like I said, that people just kind of pushed aside. Oh, Sid being Sid, and they just couldn't rely on him anymore.
Right. I'm sorry. I'm scrolling through just all the albums that Strom Thorgerson has done. Mm-hmm. Jesus Christ.
Well, he didn't do Jesus Christ.
No, but it's just an unbelievable amount of very popular albums by very popular bands.
That he did the album cover
that
for.
he did the album cover
Yeah,
for. I mean,
ton of
they're
them.
listed in alphabetical order by the band.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of these bands, at least the ones that you're aware of, he's done a handful of their albums alone.
Yeah.
He did almost all of Zeppelin's,
Uh-huh.
except for 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
He did all the other ones, including the first one.
Which is a very
Sabbath,
iconic album
last
cover.
2 Sabbath albums. He did all the first 3 solo albums by Peter Gabriel. He did all of the Pink Floyd stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The Police, Queen. He did their greatest hits and Words of Love. Band Rainbow. He did 3 of their albums. Rick Wakeman, Yes, Robert Plant, Roy Harper. Scorpions did 4 of their albums.
Mm-hmm. He's done a lot of stuff.
Styx did Syd Barrett's albums too, and David Gilmour's.
Mm-hmm. Well, which David Gilmour albums did he do?
His first 2 solos.
Okay.
One from 78, 78 and 84.
His first one I actually just bought on vinyl.
Oh, did you?
Mm-hmm. It's not great, but
he only did 2 Yes albums, Going for the One and Tormato.
okay.
But Tormato's an interesting album cover. I'm just shocked. I clicked on him and just started scrolling through all his work.
It's
I'm like,
amazing. It's amazing what he's done.
Tons.
Yeah.
Wings band. Did almost all the Wings albums.
Mm-hmm.
I think all the Wings albums.
No, I was shocked also
Yeah,
when
but
I started
anyway.
scrolling through and finding it. But yeah, it's really interesting. And like I said, it all kind of started with Saucer.
Yeah.
So the next album, which we touched on, and there's not a whole lot to say about it. More was actually a soundtrack for I want to say I don't.
Oh, so I can look at it.
I'm trying to remember. I don't think it was French because the French movie was
The soundtrack album.
It was for a movie called More. I don't remember who did the movie though. That's all. It was. But anyway, that was released in June of '69, and it was really their first attempt at doing a soundtrack. And there's not the Nile song is probably the best song off the album, and it's probably their hardest rock sound of their catalog.
Huh. I was just looking at the movie More. It doesn't say what nationality the film is, but it's about a young hitchhiker in Ibiza who has succumbed to heroin abuse with party scenes and drug taking. That's what the movie's about.
Ibiza, maybe that's what I was thinking. Foreign, but
Yeah. So anyway, continue.
but it's like I said, it's got a couple of okay tracks on it. It's not something that I listen to a whole lot.
Right.
The like I said, the Nile song is probably the best song off there to listen to. Imagawa was a really interesting album released in November of '69, so it was only a couple of months after More came out.
Mm.
And do you know where the name of the album came from?
Imagawa? I know it because you told me. It's
is that what it was?
One of the band members referred to sex.
No, it
as.
was a roadie.
Oh, roadie.
No-
That's what he called sex.
Named Emo Moore. That so he used to often say apparently that he was going to go back to the house for some Imagawa.
Referring to sex.
Yeah, referring to sex. But it's an interesting album because it's a half studio album
Half live.
and half live album,
Right.
and the live half is actually a pretty good,
Yeah.
pretty decent live album. The studio stuff, there's really nothing redeeming there.
Right.
It was you could definitely tell that they were really trying to figure out what the hell they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And each band member took their own section and did their own kind of song.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely something that's worth a listen to, but it's not something I tend to go back and listen to often.
Yeah. Well, I've never listened to it, so to be fair.
And Imagawa and More are really pretty widely regarded as some of their worst.
Well, and
music.
they both came out the same year.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be kind of a snapshot of a period of time for them as a group. So that makes sense.
And then Adam Heart Mother was released in October of '70, and it's actually kind of interesting. I'm trying to remember one of the original names of the album was something pudding. It had something to do with pudding, but I don't remember what it was. And so the band the actual name Adam Hart Mother came from an article in the Evening Standard, and it was a story about a 56-year-old woman, Constance Liddell, I think is what I have written on here at least, who had been fitted with a radioactive plutonium pacemaker.
Huh.
Outside of that, I'm not really sure what the article was about. But anyway, in July of '70, Pink Floyd was at a recording studio, recording session for a DJ. John Peel was the DJ. But anyway, during a break from the session, the band was kind of sitting around, going back, throwing ideas around for what to call this album that they were working on. And Jeff Griffin, who was a BBC producer, was in the room with them and told Roger, "Hey, you can probably find the title in the newspaper." And he looked through there and found, the name of the title of the article was called "Adam Hart Mother Named."
Yeah.
So that's where he Adam Hart Mother, and kind of stuck with him. So that was
I like the title.
Yeah.
It almost seemed to be a cool name for a band.
And it was really interesting because the studio didn't like, it wasn't the name of it. The studio didn't like the artwork because it's just a cow.
Right.
The name of the band isn't anywhere. The name of the album isn't anywhere front or back. It is what it is. And
right.
And it's now, I think that cow is kind of like an iconic.
I look at it, I know it's Pink Floyd. I mean,
Yeah.
I've always known it as Pink Floyd. But I always look at it and think, Blink-182.
Dude Ranch.
Yeah.
I never thought about it. I wonder if that's kind of the angle there.
But I mean, there's their names on the cover of that.
Yeah,
and
that's
everything.
true.
But I don't know. But that's obviously that wouldn't have been the case before that album. Before I was aware of that album.
Yeah.
But I've always known about that being a Pink Floyd album.
The songs "If" and "Fat Old Son," I think, are probably the two best songs off there. "Fat Old Son," it's definitely a more kind of traditional
rock,
something you would expect from
David Gilmour
from 1970.
Yeah, and David Gilmour.
1970 rock. There's a song on there, "Summer of '68," which is the song is actually about an encounter, and I use encounter in quotes, that Richard Wright had with a groupie.
Yeah. You can imagine what that encounter was.
But the outtakes from another soundtrack that they were working on, Zabriskie Point, which I guess 3 of their songs actually made it on, but the outtakes from what they were working on, and it kind of evolved into the song "Adam Hart Mother," which I think is 23 minutes long.
23 minutes and 44 seconds.
So
and it's probably the longest song they have
is
so far. And maybe the longest they have total. But it's the longest one we've come across so far.
It's either that or Echoes. Echoes is pretty close to that also.
We'll
but anyway,
find out.
Adam Hart Mother took up the entire first side of the album.
Yeah. And there is another long song on here on the second side.
Yeah, it's not like super long. It was 13
minutes? 13
minutes?
minutes,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. But it's in another instrumental. Which, again, it's not.
It's not instrumental.
Well, it says instrumental with speech by Alan Stiles.
Yes. So that song, which is Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast, is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
So that whole song, and David Gilmour is actually quoted as saying that this album is a bunch of weird shit. And that's basically what that song is. That song is a 13-minute track of a man making breakfast and talking.
There's no music in it?
No, there's no music in it.
Then how is it listed with actual writers? They didn't do anything.
But he's like, you can hear the sizzle from the pan. He's making breakfast.
And what makes it psychedelic?
Nothing. It's just, like David Gilmour said, a bunch of weird shit. That's kind of what that track is.
Okay.
But it's on that album that I feel musically the band really kind of started finding itself.
Yeah.
And you could definitely see them finally moving on from the Syd Barrett era to what the band would become. And you definitely saw that in Metal, which was released in November 71. I think it is outside of the top 4, outside of the big 4 albums, outside of Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, and Wall, Metal is hands down the best album outside of those.
Uh-huh.
Echoes and Fearless are 2 of the best songs they ever recorded.
And Echoes is actually shorter than
How long is that goes? It's
23:31 opposed to 23:44.
Yeah, I knew it was long. It's the entire second side of the album.
Yep.
But Fearless is a fantastic song. One of These Days is also a really fantastic song. Definitely, those three songs are definitely the best of that album. And like I said, this album was definitely a turning point. They had really kind of gotten away from all that psychedelic stuff, all the really like crazy outlandish stuff, Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast that was on Adam Hart Mother, right. And they'd really, you could see them moving towards what was going to be, and at this point they had already started working on what would become Dark Side of the Moon. Mm-hmm. In 72, because they released Metal in November of 71, June of 72 they released Obscured by Clouds, which was their second attempt at making a full soundtrack album. This is the French song, the French movie I was trying to think of. The French movie was, I'm terrible with this shit, Laval, it's Vallee, Laval, by Barbette Schroeder. Is that how you say it?
I kind of got lost with what we're talking about.
I'm talking about Obscured by Clouds.
Oh yeah, okay. I'll tell you here in a second.
That's what I've got written down here. But anyway. But anyway, they record this
Valet or I don't know.
So they record this soundtrack, and they get in a dispute with the publisher of the movie, and they're like, you know what, screw it, we're just going to release it as their own album. Right. So they renamed it Obscured by Clouds and released it. Mm. And this is, they had, like I said, when they were working on after the metal, the tour from after Metal. And while they were doing Obscured by Clouds is when they started recording and not recording, but working on a project that they called Eclipse that would end up being Dark Side.
Dark Side of the Moon, right.
On Obscured by Clouds is still a pretty decent album. Mudmen is a good song.
I was going to say, I don't know any of these songs.
What's Oh the Deal is also a really great song. Those are probably the two best songs in that album. Right. It's, and of course, it's definitely a departure from what they were doing on Metal. Probably because it was a soundtrack, so the songs are definitely a lot shorter, a lot more concise. None of the like long, drawn out kind of songs. And then, of course, you get into Dark Side of the Moon, which was released in March '73, ended up being the greatest selling album for a very long time until Thriller came out.
10 years,
and it spent an incredible 741 weeks. Which is a little over 14 years on the Billboard Top 100. Yep. Mm-hmm. Which is probably...
And I don't get that. I mean, it's a good album, but I just don't get that. You know, that extreme success. I mean, it's a good album. And
last year was 2019. It was on the Billboard chart last year.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it pops in. Same... the Eagles, their greatest hits does that too. Yeah, pops in and out of the charts,
which I think is now number
one for the greatest selling album of all time.
It's either number one or number two.
I think it's number one
because Dark Side's number 3 now.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
I want to say the Eagles beat them; they have number one. But and like I said, it's a good Dark Side's a good album, but I don't get that. There's songs on there they're good, but they're not blowing my mind so much to the extent that I think. You know that I don't get it, and I don't have to get it. You know, I like the album, I like the songs on it. I don't have to understand the popularity or the success of it.
I think Time is one of the best songs ever recorded.
I would never go that far.
I would definitely go that. It's not the best, but it's definitely fucking up there. It's an incredible song.
See, you can't really quantify that. That's an opinion.
Of course, because it's different to everyone. Yeah, absolutely. But Dark Side of the Moon, there's not a bad song on the album at all. Obviously, Money is a song that's way overplayed. Yeah. And like I said, it's definitely not even the best song on the album. No. It's probably fourth. I think Time, Us and Them.
I like Us and Them a lot.
And Brain Damage are the top.
Breathe.
Breathe is probably another one. So yeah, I mean, Money's a good. Maybe it's because of how overplayed it is.
Is why you don't like it.
It's not that I don't like it, because like I said, there's not a bad song on the album.
Right? No, I get it. It's my same problem I have with Aqualung.
Yeah.
So,
and it just musically overall, it's a perfect album musically. The way it's constructed, the way it's played. There's just it's timing. There just wasn't anything else like that before 73.
Right.
And like I said, it obviously they did something right for it selling the way it did.
I guess.
And it's nothing.
You can't argue with that.
And I know people, and you've even said it before, equate the sales to drug use and things like that. They had much more drug related albums.
True, but I think
there's nothing psychedelic.
I think this was,
there's nothing trippy to it.
The point I would have made or was trying to make when I would say that is that this is a drug album that's musically accessible to the masses.
It's not a drug album.
No,
at all.
but but the band is perceived as a drug band. So this album is going to be perceived. I'm talking about people who aren't aware of this. The same people who would think that, Ozzy Osbourne's a devil worshiper. The same type of mentality involved there. They see it as the drug album, but the music's accessible. I like that song a lot of time, and I like that song Money. So it's the album that you would get the person who's never smoked weed before to buy that album and then try weed. You know what I mean?
And Dark Side of the Moon was really their first attempt at a concept album.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the concept is.
Each song on the album focuses on a different aspect of life. Money obviously is about wealth. Us and Them is about war. Time is about squandered existence. Great Gig in the Sky is about death. So just a different aspect of life. And it's like I looking back on it, I don't really consider it a concept album. Not like obviously Wish You Were Here, Animals for sure, and The Wall for sure.
Right.
I think those three albums were progressively.
It's an early attempt at a concept album.
Yeah,
we'll say okay.
But Wish You Were Here is definitely a concept to that, and Wish You Were Here released in September of '75. It's their most popular album. I'm sorry, not their most popular. Their second most popular album, behind Dark Side of the Moon, obviously. And
really, Wish You Were Here is more popular than The Wall.
The Wall is the highest selling double album of all time. But as far as popularity goes, I think Wish You Were Here is more popular.
See, I would think that if you mentioned it, just walk up to a random stranger and you say, name me two albums by The Wall, by Pink Floyd. They're going to do Dark Side, they're going to do The Wall. Yeah, because I don't think Wish You Were Here would come up in the list by just the casual person. You and me, maybe Wish You Were Here, I'd say, but Shine On You Crazy Diamond was a song that would pop up, and if you...
I would think the title
a song
track,
that's not on The Wall or
I would think Wish You Were Here would be...
Yeah, maybe, because it still gets a lot of radio
play. It still
but,
does.
But Shine On You Crazy Diamond is a very popular song.
Oh, of course. And Shine On You Crazy Diamond 1 through 5 is better than the 6 through 9.
Fair enough.
But anyway, there's not a bad song. Every song on that album is an incredible song.
Right.
And I think Wish You Were Here is obviously the best song off that album. It's probably their most played song off that album. And the concept behind that album was just, for the most part, greed of the music and record industry. Mm-hmm. The song Have a Cigar, which is a really good song. It's the only Pink Floyd song not sung by a member of the band. It's actually sung by Roy Harper. Yep. And there's different stories of why that is. One of the stories goes that, because obviously it was written by Roger Waters. Roger Waters has a very strong dislike for the people that run the music industry. Mm. And the name of the song, there's actually a line in the song. The song is loosely based on real life. Okay. It was that they had gone in, met with a record producer. and going back and forth, and the record producer's like, hey, have a cigar, we're gonna make lots of money. And later in the conversation, the record producer's like, hey, by the way, which one's Pink? Thinking that one of the band members, he had no fucking clue anything about the band,
right?
And it's just and that kind of fed into all this hatred that
just
Roger
the artificialness
had
of it, the fakeness,
and so he wrote this song against the record industry, and David Gilmour didn't share the same feelings, so that's why he didn't want to sing the song. I guess there is a recorded version of a duet version of it with Roger and David singing it together. But Roy Harper was in the studio next door recording an album, and it was over there talking one day, and he actually just sang the song. And but Roy Harper, it's meant for him being the record executive, singing to or talking to the band. So it's definitely it's a great song.
So they rewrote the lyrics a little bit to change the perspective of the
song?
No.
It's the same lyrics.
Okay,
it's the same lyrics. It's just a different. They used a different voice to show from a different perspective.
Gotcha. Okay.
But like I said, there's not a bad song off the album.
Mm-hmm. No, I like that album a lot. Excuse me, I'm tickling my throat.
Oh yeah, I should be for the amount of talking I'm doing.
I'm just letting you go. I'm letting you enjoy your time. So
yeah, because this is something I really enjoy talking about. Because I normally sit around and talk to my wife about it, and she's like, "Yeah, I don't really give a shit." My wife fucking hates Pink Floyd, so
yeah. Anyway,
hence why I'm going to see Roger Waters by myself,
right?
Which is gonna be really interesting because
I would have gone with you, but I'm not spending that kind of money.
I don't like eating by myself, let alone going to a concert. But it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah,
I did read something I was reading an article online that was like 6 reasons why it's great to go to a concert by yourself, and it was like. One of them was talking about, if you feel like out of place, he goes like, well, most people don't even know you're not there by yourself. And it's like, they were like, well, if somebody notices, just say you're there from a local paper, covering the concert or whatever. So I don't know.
I never thought of it. I've gone to a concert by myself before.
Yeah.
I went and saw Rusty Root at Hill Auditorium in Ann Arbor.
Okay. This is pretty sweet though, because I'm gonna be 20 rows from the stage. So
I was in the front row for that show, so I could have pulled off the whole I'm here writing a review of the band. I could have pulled that off, but I didn't care. I enjoyed. I was there to enjoy myself.
So the next album that came out was Animals, released in January of '77, which is a fantastic album.
Well, this is an album where the concept is extremely obvious too.
Is it? What's the concept?
To a degree, I mean, it's the. I guess I don't know, but I mean, every song is an animal.
Yes.
And I think every song is representing a human / animal concept.
No. Each song is representing an individual that's in power running England at the time.
Okay. Well, I knew there was some animal to human ratio
There's speculation on 3 of them. He mentions White House in one. I don't remember the person's first. I think it's a female. I don't remember their first name, but I know their last name is White House, obviously. So that's a pretty obvious one.
There was Mary Whitehouse. She was a Christian fundamentalist who tried to get basically all music and movies banned off of TV. Everything
was that in the UK or
it was in the UK.
So maybe that's what it is. Then
They made a movie about her called Filth.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that might be it. And then it's speculated that another one's Margaret Thatcher. I don't know who the.
I don't know where Margaret Thatcher wasn't prime minister yet, though.
No,
so I don't know where she was in the.
But like I said, it's different. I think it's Margaret Thatcher.
I mean, she obviously was a minister or something.
Yeah. So but each song is specifically pointing at a different person running England at the time.
Right.
No, there you go. There's the concept part right there.
Yeah, I'm going to read it. Using George Orwell's Animal Farm as a point
yes
to begin with.
The album was actually supported by the largest stadium tour of all time at that time. So that's kind of interesting. It was the In the Flesh tour. Is did you find it in there?
I'm still scrolling through. It's
a long concept.
Well, it doesn't really break. It doesn't break it down on what the songs are, who the songs might be. Oh.
I think you're right. I think it is
Mary Whitehouse. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Only one directly identified is morality campaigner Mary Whitehouse.
Okay.
Who, amongst other things, is described as a house-proud town mouse.
Yes.
So, I'm aware of her because she went after Doctor Who in the late 70s very strongly. Now we're talking about a science fiction program, and she considered it too violent for children.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So...
But, it's the 70s.
It was the 70s, yeah. But, I mean, she was... and to be fair, I actually knew about her even kind of before I was into Doctor Who because I saw the movie Filth. Before I even knew what Doctor Who was, to be honest with you. Or at least it was in my sphere.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, yeah, that's funny because she's not well regarded in the history of...
Gotcha.
She's almost a joke to today. So
I think "Dogs" is the best song off that album. I think "Dogs" is probably one of my top 5.
Yeah, no, I like "Dogs" because I like the guitar.
I like "Dogs" too. I got 3 of them.
If you don't want to take this seriously, we could just quit right now.
Do I ever take anything seriously?
I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
But that's another album where there's not a bad song on it.
Yeah.
Pigs on the Wing 1 and 2 are great songs. Sheep's a great song. Dog's a great song. So is Pigs. So take a pick.
Right.
So, and like I said, at the time it was the largest stadium tour in history.
At the time.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, it was the last show in Montreal is where the wall concept came from. And it was really during this time that the band really kind of disintegrated. During the In the Flesh tour, Roger would show up in his own helicopter while the band came in a limo from different... I mean, they were staying in different hotels, everything. They would show up at shows, and that was kind of it. They were barely on speaking terms, I guess, at the time.
I can't search what something is about, but I can search by title, actors or directors, and categories like horror or action.
I don't know what I hit on my watch.
Well,
it was listening.
I was going to say, it was listening and had a little glitch in it and wanted you to clarify what you were saying.
But, so this was kind of like the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
And then The Wall, which was released in November of 79, which was just a couple months after I was born. But the Wall ended the band. It was during the...
Was that the only album that Bob Ezrin produced for them?
I believe so.
Okay, because I know Alan Parsons produced
Dark Side of the Moon. Bob Ezrin actually played a lot of the piano parts on that too. Okay.
Well, the only reason I asked is because Bob Ezrin produced the vast majority of Alice Cooper's albums.
Yeah.
So,
and Bob Ezrin. So during the beginning of the creation of the album, in the very early stages, Bob Ezrin actually took all of Roger Waters' ideas and wrote. It wasn't a script, but like a 30-page story.
Treatment kind of thing.
Yeah, to kind of keep the whole concept together. Because it's a massive idea. And he was just kind of keeping... I figured if you put everything on paper, it would help kind of the creative process. And early on, the band... And I think Roger Waters takes a lot of the blame for it. But David Gilmour and Nick Mason had equal hands to play in it, was the firing of Richard Wright.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, Richard Wright had substance abuse issues. He'd gone through divorce, and at this point wasn't a functional member of the band. He was no longer involved in the creative process.
He wasn't contributing.
Correct. So, he was there in the beginning. He was fired by Roger Waters, and Bob Ezrin ended up playing a lot of his parts on the album. And then they end up hiring or bringing Rick Wright back for the tour, which it was an abbreviated tour anyway for the production size of it. I want to say they had shows in New York, L.A., and like one other area. I don't remember if it was in Florida or where it was. But anyway, they had a very limited touring schedule. So Rick Wright came on as like a session musician for the tour,
right?
Which I guess he said he was the only one that made money on the tour because of production.
Because they paid him as a session musician. That makes sense.
But and it was really kind of Roger Waters' overbearing kind of creative process that kind of led to a lot of the tension on the band.
I can see that
because Roger Waters, by all accounts, seems like a very focused, I guess is maybe the best way to say it, person. And David Gilmour and Nick Mason are kind of like polar opposites. They're the kind
I
of
can see that.
very
kind of
very laid back, and they just
and,
want to kind of come in and do their thing. And Nick Mason came in and recorded almost all of his tracks early on in the process. And so there was some of the songs on the album he didn't even play drums on because Roger Waters felt that Nick wasn't capable of playing those drum parts.
There's really not. I don't think there's anything overly complex about the
drum
parts.
Think so either. And I think that kind of all played into this. Right. They were kind of coming in separately and recording their own parts and then being done with it. And like I said, it's the highest grossing double album of all time. And it seemed like pulling teeth putting this whole damn album together. Mm-hmm. But the finished product is phenomenal. I think it's definitely one of their best. I would put it, like if I had to rank them, it would probably be, for me, their third best album.
Well, it's the one that I'm most familiar with, obviously, because going back, for better or worse, and I'm sure my dad listens to our show, but he had a bootleg copy of The Wall, the movie, and I watched that a bunch of times when I was probably not old enough to be watching that. I mean, I was like 4 or 5 or 6, and I remember seeing that movie a bunch of times at that age, at that early of an age. So my familiarity with it obviously started with the movie, and then of course went to the album. So I know The Wall quite well as a work because of that, because it goes back a long time.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. The ones that's an album I can probably like give you like top whatever songs. Hey You, I love Hey You. That's the one song I can listen to over and over again. Run Like Hell, love it. Comfortably Numb, love it.
Run Like Hell is generally the song they end their shows with. At least they used to when they toured as a band.
Yeah. I love, and those are songs. I was going to say that might be the song that I could see the drumming be a little bit more complex, but not even really.
No.
But still,
I don't think so.
I like the vocals in the song.
I think Comfortably Numb is probably the best song on the album.
Right.
Like the second guitar solo on Comfortably Numb, I think, is one of the best guitar solos in rock.
Again, can't quantify that, but
I mean, David Gilmour has a very distinct guitar playing style. And from what I understand, it's hard. The session musicians that Roger Waters has brought in over the years for tours have had a very hard time even coming close to replicating his sound.
Right.
So I mean, it's when you hear a guitar solo, a David Gilmour guitar solo, you can pick it out of a hat. You know,
right.
you know exactly where.
Well,
where it comes
good
from.
guitarists have a signature. I think, but the vast majority.
The song "Comfortably Numb" seems to be like where the biggest riff comes from between David and Roger.
Okay.
Because David wanted a darker, heavier guitar sound, and Roger felt that it didn't fit with the overall album. Because Roger's writing the lyrics, but David's kind of putting in his guitar sound.
He's adding music. I mean, he's listed as a co-writer on several songs, and Empty Spaces he wrote alone. From looks at obviously not the lyrics, but
and if you go back,
no, it doesn't even specify the lyrics. He wrote. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
So,
but if you go back and listen to David's like live recordings of Comfortably Numb, you get a better sense of what he wanted the song to sound like.
Right.
And the live version of Comfortably Numb off of Pulse is fantastic. It's probably the best that song has ever sounded.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I was my vision isn't very good. It's not Empty Spaces, Young Lust and Goodbye Blue Skies, which actually
Goodbye Blue Skies is
a fantastic
song. And
song. Young Lust is too. It's another one that's kind of a stands out in my memory, because when that's playing in the film is when all that rioting is going on in the film, and I don't, even to this day, I don't remember what the rioting was all about.
It's probably been, how old am I? 40?
Yeah.
So it's probably been 25 years since I've
No,
seen
it's
the
been
movie.
it's been a long time since I watched it too. But like I said, I remember watching it when I was very young. 3, 4, 5 years old.
Mhm.
So my memories go back that far. Probably the very first time I ever saw a woman naked, too, because that woman gets topless in that scene.
Yeah.
And I, like I said, I was watching that when I was a little kid, and I turned out all right.
One of My Turns is another great song off that album. But
Yeah.
but that was it. That's kind of all I had about The Wall. It's a fantastic album, obviously, and I have the movie. I just haven't
Watched it. Yeah.
Oh.
There's actually a couple songs I'm seeing on this that I don't remember listening to.
Like what?
Vera?
Oh, Vera's a fantastic. Vera's actually about a real person.
Okay.
Vera was a woman during World War II. She was a singer. She was a really popular singer during World War II. Because there's the recurring theme of war and his father dying in the war plays on throughout the album.
Right, obviously.
So that's why you've got Vera, and then what's the next song? Bring the Boys Back Home. Is that what?
Yep, bring the boys back home.
Yeah, those songs kind of bleed into one. Oh, I mean, the whole album.
Well,
kind of bleeds.
whole album bleeds, and even like Happiest Days of Our Lives, which is right between the two, Another Brick in the Wall. I'm sure if I heard it, I would remember it because it's just a musical interlude. But I don't.
Yeah, but
I don't really remember it.
Vera Lynn was a real person.
Okay,
That's what that song's about.
gotcha. I just don't remember that. I just don't remember the song.
Yeah, Vera's a good song. Like, there's not. For a long time, I really felt like The Wall was an overrated album.
Well, I feel that way about the band as a whole, but I would say I'm slightly more forgiving of it than I used to be.
Yeah.
But
When you go through, and The Wall is one of those albums where it's really hard to just sit and pick and choose songs.
well, you can't. You have to listen to the whole thing.
And when you listen to the whole thing and you listen to it in order, there's a very obvious story that plays along through it.
Right.
I mean, starting at the beginning through from his dad dying to childhood and going through school and dealing with his mother to growing up and becoming a rock star and dealing with all that stuff and dealing with groupies and just kind of the mental break that he goes through and creating the wall and separating himself from the rest of society. It's a very laid out song. It's a very laid out story when you listen to the whole thing chronologically.
Yeah. No, it's definitely an album you listen to all the way. You listen to as a whole.
Yeah.
For sure.
And it's one that a couple of months back, I probably listened to it. I had the entire album on repeat, and I probably listened to it 5 times in a row over the course of one day. The final cut comes out March of '83.
I've never listened to this album.
It shouldn't have been a Pink Floyd album. It really should have been
A Roger
Waters solo album. And as far as tracks go on it, it's been a while since I've listened to it, but there are some good songs on it. The Southampton Dock's a good song. I'm just kind of like scrolling down through it. The Fletcher Memorial Home is the best song off the album, in my opinion. Two Sons in the Sunset. It's good. I feel like at that point, so the whole concept to that album is the Falklands War,
Right.
and Roger's displeasure of the whole fiasco that it was.
Yeah.
That's what the whole album's about.
Well, because it was
That's the
the
concept.
empire still trying to hold on to its empire.
Yes. So that's the concept behind the final cut. And after that is where when the lawsuits came in and the whole
Between
kind
the
of
band.
Yeah, between the band and the whole kind of thing fell apart.
Yeah, it said here, David Gilmour felt many of the tracks were not worthy of inclusion, but Waters accused him of failing to contribute material himself.
Yeah.
And it says Nick Mason's contributions were mostly limited to sound effects.
Yep.
So
It's basically a Roger Waters concept album.
right. So
But then they come back with A Momentary Lapse of Reason in '87, which was a big return for him.
It was.
I was 8 years old when that came out, and I remember the hype surrounding that album.
Yeah.
Didn't you said your stepfather at the time was
he was a huge Pink Floyd fan, and when this album came out, it was on a lot in the house for sure.
and rightfully so. It is a good album.
It is a good album, and then of course, I mean, Learning to Fly had the music video, which was had heavy rotation on MTV back when MTV was a music video station.
I think Learning to Fly is the best song on the album.
Bob
Ezrin did that album also.
Did he?
Because he has a lot of writing credits.
Dogs of War is a good song.
Yeah, Dogs of War is definitely a good song. On the Turning Away is a fantastic
New Machine.
song.
I love A New Machine. That's a good song.
I'm sure you do.
Well, yeah, I just bought a new machine. It's called a car.
Touche. But the remastered, not remastered, but the version of Momentary Lapse of Reason that they just released last year in the Later Years box set. So Nick Mason kind of went through, him and David Gilmour went through, kind of cleaned up the album a little bit, and Nick Mason redid his drumming parts. And that version of On the Turning Away, I think, is a better version than the original album version.
Which I was going to listen to the two different versions, and I don't think I have yet. No, I know I did. I know I haven't. So,
but Sorrow is a good song also.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I don't know if you mentioned that.
No, I didn't. That is a good one too.
But and then you've got Division Bell, released in March of '94. Obviously, was a gigantic fucking album.
Yeah, it was huge. Yeah.
By the way, returning to '70s Pink Floyd, I'm pretty sure Pink Floyd is the only artist in the '70s that had the #1 selling album for 2 separate years.
Okay.
Because obviously Dark Side of the Moon was the highest selling album in '73. The Wall was in
'79. Okay.
But on to Division Bell was.
It says Division Bell is the album that Polly Sampson wrote.
You're right. It was
many of the lyrics.
It was. I thought she did on Momentary Lapse, but I guess not. It was Bob Ezrin that co-wrote a lot of the songs on there. But yeah, Polly wrote all the lyrics on Division Bell.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch. What Do You Want From Me is a great song. Maroon's good. A Great Day for Freedom. I think the best 2 songs in the album are the last 2. Lost for Words and High Hopes.
Yeah. No, it was the first Pink Floyd album I ever owned myself personally.
Did you have the Blinking Light CD version?
No, I just had the regular plastic case CD version.
Okay. Because you can still buy the ones with the. Because I remember them being in the store.
I do. I remember that too. No, I had
the batteries are replaceable. So
yeah, the version I had was just the regular plastic CD case version. But yeah, it was the first Pink Floyd album I ever owned, ever, and yeah, that album was huge that year. I remember news articles. It was on,
Look at it this way. So the major music charts in the world: UK, Australia, Austria, Canada, France, Germany, New Zealand, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and the U.S. Out of all of Pink Floyd's albums, do you know the only album that was #1 in all those?
Was it Division Bell?
It was Division Bell.
Yeah.
This is the only one that was #1 in all of them. The Wall was close. The Wall was #1 in everything but the UK. It was #3.
Huh. It was a little judgmental of British society
maybe,
to a degree.
Maybe. Yeah, Division Bell was #1 all across the board. But and I feel like I said earlier, I think Division Bell is a far superior album than what Momentary Lapse was, just because it had more inclusion from the other band members. So it was more along the lines of how they recorded, say, Metal, Atom Heart Mother,
right,
with full incorporation musically from the entire band. Yeah. And then Endless River, which was their last album released after Rick Wright died. So Division Bell was supposed to be a double album. They took David Gilmour and Nick Mason took the leftover tracks from the Division Bell sessions, took Rick Wright's piano, and recorded an entire album around those tracks. And that's what the Endless River ended up being. The Endless River was released November of 2014, 20 years after Division Bell was released. And it was an album kind of to celebrate Rick Wright's life and what Rick Wright meant to Pink Floyd. Because even though he wasn't the biggest, most recognized person, Rick Wright was kind of the heartbeat of what Pink Floyd was throughout its most popular years.
Right.
And so Endless River is more ambient, more ambient music. I don't like the term ambient. It's softer, more. It's all instrumental except for the last track on the album, which is the last track on the album is actually a really good track.
Louder Than Words.
Yeah. And and it
was a single too.
Oh, was it? Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing. From 68, Pink Floyd didn't release a single from 68 until Another Brick in the Wall Part 2.
Yeah.
Was released as a single, I think, in either 79 or 80. That's, you go 12 years without having a single, and you have this hugely successful financial period.
Right.
And then they just...
Well, no, I would say that Pink Floyd is one of those bands that is hugely popular despite themselves.
Okay, yeah.
Because they don't make music to be mass consumed. They make the music for themselves and for their fans.
Yeah. Which is how music should be.
Yeah, but it's generally it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Especially if you listen to pop music today. It's meant to just be consumed and then thrown away.
And then, for sure. And then they just released in November 2019, The Later Years, which is a great box set. It's got a lot of really great live stuff, live videos on there. It's got the Nebworth concert on there from early 90s. It's got a lot of like cleaned up audio from Delicate Sound of Thunder, some stuff off of Pulse. And it's they released a compilation best of the Later Years box set on vinyl. I think it's also available on.
So I mean, really, it's the best of 3 albums, correct?
But it's a best of from all the live stuff and all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's not there's nothing on the Later Years vinyl that they released or CD that they released. Outside of the box, there's nothing in the box set that's from Division Bell and Momentary Lapse.
Okay,
it's all stuff that's re-edited, redone, like freshened up.
Right.
But the Later Years vinyl, it's a fantastic album. I mean, the day I bought it, I probably listened to it at least 3 or 4 times.
Oh, okay.
But it's got great live versions of Comfortably Numb on there. I Wish You Were Here. It's got a couple of tracks off of Momentary Lapse. Overall, it's a really good album. But anyway, Pink Floyd's got this big, long, drawn-out history, and it seems like a lot of times people focus on, like I said earlier, the stuff that happened with Sid and the psychedelic aspect that went on early on in their career, and I think a lot of the rest of it kind of gets forgotten.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's my oral history of
of Pink Floyd.
And
it was about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Because we really didn't fuck around. We jumped right into it too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's actually shorter than I thought it was. I was figuring this is gonna be like a 2-hour episode. Really.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm kind of glad it's not.
No, because I'm tired.
I mean, it could be. It could be, but
well, yeah, because I kind of breezed through the post Waters albums.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's really just 2 of them. If you're not counting live, I mean, you did cover the live a little bit, but there's just really the 2, and then 3 if you want to count Endless River. So,
yeah. But it's Pink Floyd is one of those bands where yes, they've got some very overplayed songs, but there's so much more to the band music.
And I think that's true of a lot of the greats. When you're talking about great bands, and there's no arguing that Pink Floyd's a great band, and even if I don't necessarily like him as much as say you or anyone else, but
yeah,
there's no arguing they're a great band, and it's always going to be the case with a great band. They're going to have when they go and play a show in their 40th year, there's always going to be that one guy. It's like The Simpsons with Bachman Turner Overdrive. Play Taking Care of Business. Sir, we just did. Play Taking Care of Business.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
there's definitely, you're always going to have those kind of people.
exactly. And I would say that's going to make up the vast majority of the audience.
Maybe. But it's unfortunate because it's those deeper cuts.
Absolutely. And that's, again, that's just where I was going to go. It's the stuff that you don't know that's going to blow your mind more than anything else. Always. With any artist that's worth the damn. It's always going to be the songs that aren't on the radio, the songs that aren't singles, that are going to be the best songs always. So
there's a song off of Metal called Seamus. And I don't know whose dog it is, but someone's dog is like barking through the whole song. And it always freaks my dogs out when I play it. The first time Mandy heard it, she's like, is there a dog outside? I was like, no, it's
the song.
That's on the album I'm playing.
Yeah. I definitely understand why your wife doesn't like any of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's funny, there's a record store, I think it's Flipside, that the owner always posts, or he has posted several pictures of his dog. His dog's name is Seamus. I wonder if it's that. I wonder if it's why.
You never know.
Maybe
we'll have to go in there and ask.
Some kind of crazy Pink Floyd fan.
Very possible.
Well, that's all I got, man. I don't know if there's
nothing I want to add. This was pretty much like your gig. I was just here
you're here to nod your head and say yes.
Well, to help out with I guess the factual stuff and kind of provide. I was here to provide the casual listener perspective or
ask
questions.
So you're providing the perspective that I had up until 2 years ago.
I'm the audience. I'm playing the audience. I'm here on the audience. Perhaps.
So you're sleeping.
No, I just turned it off an hour and a half ago. I didn't even bother to show up.
And I'm done.
Right. Anyway.
But yeah, I would say, like I said, if you've never heard the band, go check out some of those other tracks I mentioned.
Yeah, and more importantly, if you have heard the song, the hits, listen to the non-hits. Yeah. Listen to the albums that you don't know about. Yeah, you might find something you like. You may not, but you may come across something that, like I said, blows your mind.
And you might come across something and you're like, what the fuck is this?
Well,
why am I listening to sizzling bacon in a pan? What the hell is going on? What the hell have I found?
It's a psychedelic breakfast.
Yeah, it's Alan's
psychedelic breakfast.
Yeah. But all right, any questions or comments, you can email us at contact@lifeandjournalpodcast.com. Check us out on Twitter at LIGpod. We're on Facebook, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and email us if there's a band out there you would like Ian to talk about for an hour and a half.
Well, I was going to point this out after the show. This is what I thought my Jethro Tull show was going to be, but we spent an hour arguing about the album cover of one fucking record.
I didn't think we were going to spend an hour and a half arguing about the fucking album cover.
Well, you kind of made it that way because you're confrontational, or
I'm not confrontational.
You're contrarian when it comes to, you're intentionally contrarian.
I found an interesting story about a very famous record cover that I never had heard before.
Right. Well, all I can say is that we may at some point down the road be revisiting the Jethro Tull catalog.
Absolutely,
as a rule, in a much more similar way.
I will gladly have more to say during the 60s and 70s conversation about Jethro Tull than what Ian had to say about Pink Floyd.
Perhaps.
Post 1979.
Not so much. But to be fair, there's more records to cover post 79 with Tull than there were for Pink Floyd, but
obviously.
Yeah. But yeah, fair enough. We may do this with other bands too. There's no reason it has to be just Jethro Tull and Pink Floyd.
Green Day would be a good one to cover.
Green Day would be a good one to cover. I was even thinking Alice Cooper, possibly.
Yeah. Wham.
Well, we could do Wham in about 30 minutes, probably. But it would require both of us to actually listen to the albums.
I was going to say, I don't know. I think I can only name one fucking Wham
I think
song.
They have 2 albums.
Do they?
I think they have 2. I could be wrong, but I think they have 2. I only know 2 of their songs.
They've got that "You Put Your Ball Sack Into My Mouth" song.
And then that other one is... I actually kind of like the other song.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that one.
Well, that's not the name of the song.
You put your ball sack into my mouth.
That's not the song. But that's all I hear when I hear that song.
That's a David Spade joke, by the way.
But that's all I hear when I hear that song, by the way.
That's all I hear also. What is the other one? It's the Jitterbug song, and then...
No, I didn't like. I'd say two good songs. I like that one song, but no, it was that. It's kind of like a.
I'm sorry that I mentioned Wham.
Well, now I have to know. So it's.
I was like, oh, what's one band that only
Wake
has
Me Up
like...
Before You Go is the ball sack in your mouth song.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
And what's the name of that?
You put your ball sack into my mouth.
That is. What's the name of that fucking song?
I don't know. It's Wham.
Yeah, I know it's Wham.
I don't know. What's another really bad band?
Menudo.
I couldn't name you a single Menudo song.
I don't know, but they had some like ballad song that was okay.
Okay.
Back in the
Sure.
day. It was played way overplayed, but you know.
Okay.
But Wake Me Up Before You Go is the ball sack in your mouth song.
And if you don't know what that is, look up that David Spade joke.
Yeah, I think it's he
was talking about how he never knew his favorite bands growing up were gay.
Or members of the band were gay. Yeah.
Yes. He was like,
he mentions Wham and Queen.
yes.
Yeah. I wouldn't say Wham was when he was growing up though, but
well, that's his bit. So
yeah,
I'm just saying.
Because I mean, he was already at SNL by the mid '80s. I think Wham broke up in the mid '80s. Pretty close.
Wham broke up in like the early '80s because that was before
George
Michael's solo career.
Right, but I'm not an expert on Wham, so I'm not an expert on George Michael either.
Yeah, I don't know if I can name any of his songs.
Faith.
That's the only one I know.
And what's the no? There was that other one. That was
his first solo album, wasn't it? I want to say that was like '85 or '86.
There was two songs that came out off of whatever solo album that was. That had Faith was the one single, and then another single because the videos were very similar. But I don't remember the name of the other song. It was slightly more. I don't know.
George Michael had 5 solo albums. Faith came out in October of '87.
Okay, that sounds about right.
I Want Your Sex.
No,
that's the one.
Oh, maybe that was the other one.
Faith, Father Figure.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Monkey. I remember
that one.
Those are all the ones I remember.
I just remember. I don't think it was David Spade. It might have been David Spade. But when George Michael came out as gay, it might have been. I don't know if it was at the Weekend Update. And it was, doing like a news report. Mm-hmm. George Michael has come out as gay. When asked why he hadn't come out sooner, his response was because everyone already knew. So,
that's hilarious.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that's enough. We spent way more time on Wham than I ever want to spend on Wham ever again. Right there. That was
Wham.
Enough. That was enough Wham for me.
All right. Well, until next time.
Talk to y'all later.
Peace.
Play my role, let me tell you about it. This shit right here, man, I'm about it. Only real niggas reside around me. Yo, old lady, drop a guard around me. Dip like I know you can, bitch. Show me the ropes like we in the ring. Got you some cobras, you wanna hang. Shoulder to shoulder, them niggas basic. You know I won't lie. You know that I ain't for that fuck shit. You niggas alright, but I'm way better and she love it. Know that y'all sick as fuck. Here go this tissue, bro. We taking the dub, hoping you get you some. This hit like a pick me up. She taking my drugs. Know they see the sign. That's some dollar signs. Know they sick as fuck. Know they sick as fuck. Tell them get well soon. Tell them get well soon. Know you sick as fuck. Get well soon. Oh shit. Watch out, you